My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 24 years old, and my story begins on a night that should have been filled with joy, laughter, and family warmth. Instead, it became the night I realized just how invisible I was to the people who were supposed to love me most. I remember standing there, shivering outside my parents' house on Christmas Eve, clutching a small wrapped gift in my hands, praying that this year would be different. But the moment my father opened the door, one short, cruel sentence shattered whatever hope I had left. White right pointing backhand index. Before I share what happened next, tell me where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The cold air bit at my cheeks, the kind of sharp December chill that made every breath sting in my lungs. I had parked 2 blocks away because the driveway was already packed, cousins' cars, my brother's truck, even my aunt's shiny new SUV. Their house looked like something out of a holiday postcard. Lights twinkled across the roofline, candles glowed in every window, and I could hear muffled laughter spilling out from inside. I stood there for a moment, holding the gift tighter against my chest. The wrapping paper had tiny snowflakes on it, the edges carefully taped down the way I always did, because little details mattered to me. I told myself it would be okay, that even though I hadn't been home much, even though I always felt like the outsider, maybe this year would be different. When I finally knocked, my heart raced in my chest. I heard footsteps approaching, fast and heavy, and then the door swung open. My father stood there, framed by the golden light of the living room behind him. His face was stained, his jaw tight, the same way it had looked on every report card day, every missed phone call, every time I fell short of being the daughter he wanted. "You don't belong here." That's all he said. 4 words. Flat. Cold. Unshaken. The words didn't even sound angry. Just final, like a door slamming shut that had been half open for years. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I thought maybe I'd misheard him, that the winter wind had twisted his voice. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of the living room. The Christmas tree glowing in the corner, my brother leaning against a couch with a plate of food in his hand, my mother laughing with a glass of wine. Music floated from the stereo, some old holiday song I used to sing along to when I was little. And then I saw her, my aunt, the one who always had something to say about me, the one who compared me to my brother at every turn. She was hugging my mother, her voice loud over the music, and I swear I saw her smake when she noticed me standing outside. But the part that made my stomach twist was the sight of someone else at that table. My best friend. The girl I grew up with. The one I thought would always be in my corner. She was sitting there, laughing, comfortable, like she belonged more than I ever had. I blinked hard, forcing back the tears that burned my eyes. My fingers dug into the wrapped gift until the paper crinkled beneath my hand. My voice finally came, weak and shaky. "Dad. I just wanted to." He cut me off. "Sarah, don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." The same words he had used since I was a child whenever I dared to stand up for myself. They fell like a hammer, silencing me all over again. I felt the weight of every Christmas past pressing down on me, the ones where my brother got the bigger gifts, the louder applause, the warmer hugs. I thought of the nights I stayed up late finishing school projects alone, hoping someone would notice, and the mornings where my accomplishments were brushed aside because they weren't as impressive as his. My father didn't move aside. He didn't invite me in. He just stared at me with that same hard look, as though letting me cross the threshold would ruin their perfect little evening. I tried to smile, though it felt like my lips were trembling. "I brought something for Mom," I whispered. He glanced at the gift in my hands, then back at me. "Leave it. We're busy." Busy. As if I was some interruption, a stranger selling something door to door. For a moment, the urge to push past him burned in my chest. To storm into that living room, to demand answers, to ask why my friend was sitting at our table when I wasn't allowed. But I didn't move. My feet felt frozen to the porch. My father's shadow stretched across the snow, and I realized just how small I looked standing there. From inside, laughter roared louder. My brother clapped my friend on the back, and my aunt raised her glass. The sight blurred as my eyes filled with tears, and I turned my face away before they could fall. "Fine," I muttered, my voice barely audible. I set the gift down on the porch railing, careful not to let it drop. My fingers lingered on it for just a second longer than necessary, as if holding on to that little box could somehow keep me connected to the family I was losing right in front of me. My father didn't say another word. He just closed the door, slow but firm, until all I could see was the wreath hanging in front of me. The sound of the lock clicking echoed louder than the Christmas music ever could. The cold wrapped around me again, harsher than before. I stood there, staring at the closed door, trying to gather the pieces of myself that had shattered in less than 2 minutes. The snow crunched under my boots as I stepped back, my breath rising in white clouds that disappeared too quickly. That was the moment it hit me. I had been foolish to think this year would be different. I had been foolish to think I still had a place there. And as I turned toward the street, toward the car parked in the dark, I knew something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just walking away from my parents' front door. I was walking away from the last illusion I'd been holding on to. And deep down, though I didn't fully realize it yet, that night would set into motion a decision that would change everything. The cold air inside my car fogged up the windows as I sat there gripping the steering wheel. I hadn't even turned the ignition yet. My hands were shaking, not from the weather, but from something far deeper, something I thought I had buried years ago. Sitting there in the dark, headlights from passing cars streaking across the windshield, the voices of my family at the door kept echoing in my head. And with every echo came memories, sharp, uninvited, and painfully alive. It's strange how one night, one rejection, can unlock a lifetime of wounds you thought you had sealed. The first memory that hit me was Christmas morning when I was 8. My brother, Daniel, tore into his gifts with the kind of excitement only kids can carry, while I sat with a small package resting on my lap. He got the latest action figure set, a shiny bike, even a remote control car. My gift was a sweater, 2 sizes too big, with itchy wool that scratched my skin. I remember Mom smiling and saying, "Well, you'll grow into it." I laughed it off then, pretending it didn't bother me, but that sweater stayed folded in my drawer for years. I never wore it once. Tonight, as I sat alone, I realized it wasn't about the sweater, it was about what it stood for. I had always been the afterthought. Another memory slid in right behind it, sharper this time. I was 13, standing in the school gym after a winter recital. Parents were clapping, hugging their kids, snapping photos. I searched the crowd, hoping to spot my mom or dad. But the space where they should have been was empty. They never showed up. I remember telling my choir teacher they must have been busy, that something must have come up. But when I got home later, I found them sitting in the living room, watching a Christmas movie with Daniel, popcorn bowls in their laps. When I asked why they didn't come, Dad just shrugged and said, "It was just a school thing, Emily. Don't be dramatic." That line carved into me like a knife. The silence in the car grew heavier as these memories piled on, but I couldn't stop them. At 16, I tried to fight back. I'd gotten a part-time job at the grocery store down the street, stocking shelves after school. I saved every dollar I could because I wanted to buy my own gifts for once, something that felt like it came from me. That Christmas, I handed Mom a pair of earrings I bought on clearance. They weren't expensive, but I wrapped them carefully, tied the ribbon just right. She opened the box, glanced inside, and muttered, "You shouldn't spend your money on silly things." Then she set it aside and moved on to Daniel's gift, a brand new gaming console from my parents. That moment stuck like a splinter. It wasn't about the earrings. It was about how little I seemed to matter. I leaned back in the driver's seat, pressing my forehead against the cold leather. Each memory wasn't just a story. It was proof that tonight wasn't new. Being told I didn't belong had been happening my entire life, just not always with words. Sometimes it was in what they didn't say, in the way they didn't look at me, in the way their laughter felt fuller when I wasn't in the room. Another memory surfaced, this one harder to admit, because it wasn't about them ignoring me. It was about betrayal. My closest friend, Hannah, The same girl I saw tonight inside the house laughing with my family had once sworn we'd always have each other's backs. In 10th grade, when rumors started spreading about me at school, I begged her to stand by me. Instead, she joined in with the whispers. "I'm just going along with everyone," she told me once when I confronted her. "It's easier that way." That was the day I learned that even friends could leave scars that never faded. Seeing her at my family's table tonight, part of their celebration, felt like salt pressed into an open wound. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes looked older than 23 should look. Tired, heavy, like they'd been carrying years of weight. And maybe they had. I closed my eyes and let another wave of memory rush in, one that had been buried deeper than the rest. When I was 18 and packing for college, Dad pulled me aside in the hallway. I thought, for a moment, he was going to say something encouraging, finally give me the kind of fatherly words I'd always longed for. Instead, he said, "Don't expect us to bail you out if you fail. We've invested enough in you." Those words weren't just a warning, they were a declaration. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was a risk, a liability. The more I thought about it, the more I realized tonight was just the final chapter in a book that had been writing itself for years. Being told I didn't belong was nothing new. What was new was the clarity. Sitting in that car, staring at the faint outline of my childhood home, I finally saw the pattern. I let out a shaky laugh, though nothing about it was funny. My breath fogged the glass as I whispered, "They were right. I don't belong." Saying it aloud hurt more than hearing it from them. But it also did something else. It lit a spark. Because if I didn't belong here, maybe that meant I was free. The memories didn't stop, but they started to shift. Instead of just showing me pain, they began to show me something else. Resilience. The nights I cried myself to sleep but still woke up for school. The times I cooked dinner for myself when everyone else had eaten without me. The times I kept going, even when no one cheered me on. Those moments had shaped me too. They weren't just scars, they were proof I had survived. I straightened up in my seat, wiping my eyes with the back of my sleeve. For the first time in years, I wasn't just drowning in the past, I was staring it down. Every forgotten gift, every empty seat in the audience, every dismissive word, they hadn't broken me. They had built me into someone who could walk away tonight with her head high. The car was still off, the keys cold in my hand, but inside me something had shifted. I wasn't that little girl with the itchy sweater anymore. I wasn't the teenager begging for attention. I wasn't even the college freshman carrying warnings instead of blessings. I was Emily Hayes, and I finally understood something. The memories might never leave me, but neither would the strength they gave me. And that realization, as painful as it was, felt like the beginning of something new. The realization still pulsed inside me like a faint ember. Those memories would never leave me, but neither would the strength they had carved into me. I tightened my grip on the cold keys, the sharp edges pressing into my palm, and finally pushed open the car door. The winter air rushed in, stinging my skin, as though the night itself wanted to test how much more I could take. My boots crunched against the thin sheet of frost on the pavement. For a moment, I just stood there, my breath spilling into the air in white clouds, staring at the faint outline of the house I had once called home. Yellow light leaked through the curtains, spilling across the snow like warmth I could never touch. Laughter carried faintly through the glass. It was so normal in there, so familiar, and yet it had never been mine. I shoved my hands into my coat pockets and started the walk. Each step away from that driveway felt heavier than the last, as though the ground itself was reluctant to let me go. The distance was short, maybe 20 yards to where my car sat under the dim streetlight, but it stretched endlessly in my chest. Halfway down the path, I froze. The sound of the front door creaked open behind me. My body stiffened, my heart pounding, though I didn't turn right away. A voice carried into the night. Daniel's. "Emily." It wasn't warm. It wasn't even concerned. It was cautious, almost annoyed, like he was worried I might cause a scene. I turned slowly, my boots grinding against the icy gravel. There he stood on the porch, arms folded across his chest, framed by the glow of the doorway. Behind him, silhouettes moved in the warmth of the living room. I thought, for a moment, he might walk toward me. But he didn't. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his tone clipped. I almost laughed. What am I doing? The question itself was absurd. "Leaving," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing over his shoulder as though afraid someone else might step outside and see him talking to me. "You didn't have to storm off." I bit back the instinct to defend myself, to explain the ache clawing at my ribs. Instead, I let the silence stretch, the night filling in the words I refused to give him. "Finally," I said, "go back inside, Daniel. You'll miss dessert." His jaw tightened. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or shame. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Without another word, he closed the door, shutting me out all over again. The sound of the latch clicking echoed louder than it should have. I turned back toward the streetlight, forcing my feet forward. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling. I wanted to blame the cold, but I knew better. Sliding into the driver's seat, I shut the door, but instead of starting the engine, I sat there staring at the wheel. The silence of the night pressed down, broken only by the faint hum of a neighbor's wind chime. I leaned back, trying to steady my breath. But then I caught sight of the house in the rearview mirror. That image, the golden glow, the faint movement behind curtains, the home that had never been mine, sat like a stone in my chest. On impulse, I pushed the door open again. My boots hit the pavement, and before I realized what I was doing, I found myself walking. Not toward the house, not back to the driveway, but farther down the block. The night was so still that every step echoed. The walk felt endless, my thoughts spilling out faster than my feet could carry me. I passed the neighbor's house where Mrs. Henderson used to give me cookies when I was little. I remembered the way she'd pat my head and whisper, "You're always welcome here." Sometimes I wondered if she had noticed how often I lingered on her porch just to escape the silence waiting for me at home. A few houses down, I paused at the old oak tree where I used to wait for the school bus. I traced my glove across the bark, the grooves rough and familiar. I could almost see my younger self there, clutching her backpack straps, hoping each day would feel different. It never did. As I walked, the weight of everything pressed heavier, but so did something else, a quiet strength rising in me. For once, I wasn't just replaying the memories. I was letting them go, step by step, leaving them on the cracked pavement behind me. By the time I cycled back toward my car, the street felt quieter, emptier, like the night had shifted around me. My legs ached, and my breath came out in clouds, but my chest felt lighter somehow. I stopped a few feet from the car and tilted my head up. The sky was wide open, stars scattered like tiny shards of glass across the dark. I had stared at that same sky from my bedroom window countless nights as a kid, wishing for an escape I couldn't name. And now, here I was, grown, bruised, but standing on my own. The cold wind nipped at my face as I whispered into the night, "I'm still here." It wasn't defiance. It wasn't anger. It was survival. I finally slid back into the driver's seat, my body tired but steadier. This time, when I gripped the steering wheel, the tremor in my hands was gone. The walk had done something no memory ever could. It had reminded me that moving forward, even just a few steps at a time, was still movement. I placed the keys into the ignition but didn't turn them yet. Instead, I let the silence wrap around me one last time. I wasn't running anymore. I was walking back to myself. The stillness inside the car wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. My whisper hung in the air, "I'm still here," and for the first time that night, I believed it. I reached for the keys again, ready to turn the ignition, when a sharp vibration startled me. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. For a second, I just stayed at the glowing screen, the name flashing across it like a beacon. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant telemarketers or wrong calls. But something inside me, It wasn't logic, more like instinct, urged me to pick it up. My fingers hesitated before swiping across the glass. Hello. My voice came out soft, cautious. There was silence at first. Then a breath, shaky, almost hesitant. Emily. The sound of my name caught me off guard. I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse rising. The voice was familiar, but faint, worn down like paper left too long in the rain. This is Claire. I froze. My Aunt Claire. A name I hadn't heard in years. My mother's sister, the one who had vanished from our lives without explanation when I was still in high school. She had been the only person in my family who ever seemed to see me, truly see me. And then she was gone, like a page ripped clean from a book. Aunt Claire. The words stumbled out before I could stop them. A pause. Then, it's been a long time, sweetheart. I leaned back against the seat, my breath fogging up the cold glass window beside me. 1,000 questions swelled in my mind, but my throat tightened around them. Why now? Why tonight? You probably don't want to hear from me, she continued, her tone threaded with something between regret and urgency. But I had to call. I found your number through an old envelope in my drawer. I wasn't sure it would still work. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing into me. Why are you calling? Her breath hitched. Because you need to know the truth. The truth. That word landed in my chest like a stone dropped into deep water, ripples spreading fast. What truth? My voice shook despite my effort to keep it steady. She hesitated, as though weighing whether to speak. I could hear faint sounds in the background, a kettle whistling, maybe, or the creak of an old chair. Wherever she was, it wasn't far from silence itself. Your parents, they weren't honest with you, about many things, but especially about why I left. My grip on the phone tightened. I thought you moved away, that you didn't want to be part of this family anymore. That's what they told you. Her voice grew heavier, the weight of years pressing through each word. But that's not what happened. The car suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. My reflection stared back at me from the dark windshield, wide-eyed and pale. What did happen? I whispered. I was pushed out, Emily. Pushed out because I stood up for you. Because I saw the way they treated you, the way they... She cut herself off, exhaling sharply, as if afraid she'd said too much too soon. I couldn't stay silent, and when I refused to fall in line, they erased me from the picture. Her words sliced through the quiet like glass shattering. I closed my eyes, memories flashing. The time she'd slipped me little notes of encouragement, the gentle hugs that felt different from anyone else's in my family, the way she'd always defended me when voices rose too high. And then her sudden disappearance, never explained, never spoken of again. They told me you left by choice, I murmured. That was the story they needed you to believe. The silence stretched, thick and trembling. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, trying to anchor myself. Why are you telling me this now? I asked finally. Her breath came shaky through the line. Because I heard what happened tonight. Daniel called your mother, and she mentioned you had shown up. I don't know what went on, but I knew this might break you. And I couldn't sit back another day pretending I don't exist. I lifted my head slowly, my eyes burning. You've been here this whole time? Watching from the sidelines. Not watching, she said firmly, her voice sharpening with conviction. Waiting for the right moment, for when you were strong enough to hear it. And, Emily, I think you are now. I didn't answer right away. My chest rose and fell quickly, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The street light outside flickered, casting shadows that stretched across my windshield. Everything felt unstable, like the ground beneath me had shifted without warning. Aunt Claire, my voice cracked, the words breaking free before I could stop them. All those years, I thought you didn't care. Her reply was immediate, full of ache. I cared too much, sweetheart. That's why I had to go. But I never stopped thinking about you. Tears blurred my vision, sliding hot and fast down my cheeks. I pressed a fist against my mouth, trying to keep the sob from breaking the silence between us. I don't know what to say, I whispered. You don't have to say anything. Just know the truth now, and know that you're not as alone as you thought. Her words settled over me like a fragile kind of comfort, when I wasn't sure I trusted yet but desperately needed. The line went quiet again, save for her steady breathing. I knew she was waiting for me to speak, to decide whether to pull her closer or push her away. Finally, I asked, "Can we meet?" The pause on her end was long, too long, but then she said softly, "Yes. Tomorrow. I'll text you an address." When the call ended, the silence in the car felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with possibility, with the sharp ache of everything I thought I knew unraveling in the space of a single phone call. I sat there for a long time, the phone still warm in my hand, my heart racing as though it had just been set free and caged at the same time. The night no longer felt still. It felt alive, shifting, carrying me somewhere I hadn't expected to go. And all because of one call that changed everything. The phone slipped from my hand and landed on the passenger seat with a soft thud, but the sound echoed in the silence as if the entire car had swallowed it whole. My chest rose and fell in uneven bursts, the air thick and heavy, every breath scraping against my throat. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the faint glow of the screen as if it might light up again and pull me back into her voice. But it didn't. The weight of everything hit me at once, sudden and brutal, like a wave breaking against stone. My shoulders trembled as if the body I had held upright for so long finally betrayed me. My hands curled into fists against my lap, knuckles aching, trying desperately to hold myself together. Then it came, the first crack, a shallow gasp, a sharp sting at the corner of my eyes, a betrayal of the control I had clung to. I turned my face away instinctively, as though hiding from no one but myself. But there was no hiding anymore. Hot tears spilled before I could stop them. They ran fast, carving streaks down my cheeks, dripping onto my sweater. My chest heaved, and I pressed my palm against my mouth to muffle the sound. But the sobs tore through anyway, raw and unfiltered, shaking me with a force I hadn't felt in years. It was as if every word Aunt Claire had spoken cracked open a vault I'd kept sealed too long. Memories tumbled out, quiet humiliations, the sharp sting of careless words, nights I had cried into my pillow pretending I didn't care. Each one returned with brutal clarity, stacking themselves inside me until the weight was unbearable. I bent forward, forehead pressing hard against the steering wheel. The leather felt cool against my skin, grounding me even as my body shook. My cries echoed in the small cabin of the car, bouncing off the windows and back at me, multiplying in the hollow dark. For years, I had carried the hurt like a secret stone in my pocket, heavy, hidden, never shown. I had smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, swallowed the pain until it felt like silence was my only language. But tonight, the stone shattered, and I shattered with it. A harsh knock rattled the window beside me. I jerked upright, wiping at my face with my sleeve. Through the fogged glass, I saw an older man in a heavy coat, his brow furrowed, concern shadowing his face. I rolled the window down halfway, the cold night air rushing in, cooling the heat of my tears. "Ah, you all right, miss?" he asked gently. His voice carried the kind of softness only strangers sometimes have, unburdened by history. I nodded quickly, though the redness of my eyes betrayed me. "I'm fine. Just needed a moment." He studied me for a beat, his breath clouding in the chill. "All right then. Just making sure. Nights can feel heavier when you're alone." Something in his words cut deeper than he could have known. I managed a small thank you, and he gave me a nod before walking back across the lot, his figure swallowed by the dark. When the window slid shut, I collapsed again, though quieter now, my sobs softer, more controlled. The interruption had reminded me I was still in the world, still seen, even if only by a stranger passing through. I sat like that for what felt like hours, the tears coming in waves, easing only when exhaustion dulled their edge. At some point, I leaned back, my head hitting the seat, eyes swollen and raw. The silence afterward was different. It wasn't the suffocating stillness from before. It was softer, almost tender, like the quiet after a storm when the air smells of rain and earth. My chest still ached, but there was space in it now, room to breathe. I glanced at the passenger seat where my phone rested, screen dark, her number already fading into memory. My hand reached for it again, hesitated, then pulled back. Not tonight. Tonight wasn't about answers. Tonight was about letting go. My reflection in the rearview mirror startled me. My eyes were rimmed red, lashes damp, face pale and streaked. For once, I didn't flinch at the sight. It felt honest, messy, broken, but honest. I cracked the window, letting in the night air. The cool breeze brushed against my damp skin, carrying the faint scent of pine and asphalt. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a reminder that life went on, indifferent to the storms that wrecked us inside. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an old napkin, dabbing at my face until the worst of the wetness was gone. My hands trembled less now, though the weight in my chest lingered. The tears had taken something from me, but they had given something back too. A kind of release, small but undeniable. I turned the ignition key just enough to light up the dashboard. The soft glow filled the car, a fragile halo in the dark. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, watching the tiny lights flicker, listening to the faint hum of power waiting to be used. A memory surfaced then, not one of pain, but of being 10 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with Aunt Claire as she taught me how to fold paper cranes. When you feel like the world is too heavy, she had said, her hands moving gently, make something small. Something that feels like it belongs only to you. I had forgotten that moment until now. Forgotten how her presence had felt like safety in a house that often didn't. The thought broke me again, but this time the tears were softer, steadier. Not the violent storm from earlier, but a quiet stream, running clean. I let them fall. Outside, the street light flickered once more before burning steady, casting a golden hue across the hood of the car. I watched it through blurred vision, the glow bending and breaking across the wet streaks of my window. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wipe the tears away. I let them stay, proof that I could feel, that I was still here. The night held me gently then, the tears finally spent but leaving their mark, and I understood in a way I hadn't before. Sometimes breaking was the only way to begin again.